National Training and Development Curriculum for Foster and Adoptive Parents.
Being a foster or adoptive parent has many joys and rewards, but it isn't always easy. At some point, all parents will experience challenges and even periods of crisis. In the following segments, you'll learn about the science behind a crisis, the 4 phases of a crisis, how to manage an acute crisis, and strategies to prevent a crisis from escalating. You'll also hear from professionals in the field of crisis management, including Alyssa Calandra, an expert in the field of crisis, trauma, and adoption; Lori Ross, founder and CEO of Foster Adopt Connect, which serves families of traumatized children.
Lori Ross has parented 5 biological children, 23 adopted children, and over 400 children in foster care.
Phyllis Stevens, founder and executive director of Together as Adoptive Parents, has worked directly with families in crisis for more than 30 years.
Phyllis Stevens is a parent by birth and adoption.
And Terry DeMarco, who runs support groups for foster and adoptive parents.
Terry DeMarco has adopted 5 children from foster care. Lori Ross, President and CEO, Foster Adopt Connect.
There are lots of things that can qualify as a crisis, but typically it is something that rises to the level that for the safety of the child or the safety of the family, you have to do something to intervene.
Understanding how the body responds to a perceived threat or danger is an essential part of managing a crisis.
The science of a crisis.
A person who's just sitting, not feeling particularly upset or worried about something is regulated. They are breathing at a normal rate, their heart beats at a normal rate.
When we sense danger, our body releases stress hormones and engages the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Alyssa Calandra, Clinical and Family Support Supervisor, The Baby Fold.
Fight, flight, or freeze is an evolutionary sort of process that we're all born with, and all it does is alert us to a potential danger. In an optimal or safe situation, the caregiver is there to provide calm to the child, to meet the child's needs, and so all of those stress hormones then are replaced with calming hormones. And then you end up with this cycle of safety and trust and love. Looking at a situation where there's been trauma or abuse and neglect, what happens is a child has a need and the caregiver either doesn't meet it or doesn't meet it consistently. So then what you've got is a child who has all of those stress hormones coming through and kind of flooding their brain and their body, and the caregiver isn't there to sort of provide that calm. So it doesn't take a lot of stress for a child who has had a lot of trauma to get to that place of fight, flight, or freeze.
When our kids lose that state of regulation, they struggle then to think, to control their emotions, to react appropriately for the context or the circumstance or the place where they are.
Phyllis asks her children questions at the kitchen island.
Jules, do you want cheeseburger or hot dog?
Phyllis Stevens, adoptive parent.
Youngest one now, he's 7 years old. His crisis started at probably when he was first placed with us. He would scream constantly. As he grew, that screaming became rageous. And that's when we knew that we had to get help.
As Phyllis and Derek learned, without strategic interventions, explosive behaviors often lead to crisis. Understanding the 4 phases of a crisis can help parents identify triggers and prevent a crisis from escalating.
The triggering phase is the beginning of the crisis cycle. A trigger can be an internal or external event. Sometimes a trigger can be really obvious, and sometimes it's a complete mystery.
It could be hearing a song on the radio, it could be a smell that triggers a memory, it could be pretty much anything that causes them to suddenly feel emotions related to an experience they've had previously.
It's really important for parents and caregivers to keep some kind of a log about around when their child has a crisis, because then it can give some clue as to what that trigger may be.
Sometimes triggers may be harder to connect to trauma.
Phyllis and family play a board game.
Kill you, you're both dead.
It can be helpful to consult with people who know the child's history to gain more insight. When Phyllis and Derek couldn't figure out their daughter's nighttime fears, they reached out to her former foster parent.
She wouldn't go to sleep at night, and she kept telling me the beep beeps was going to get her. The beep beeps are here, the beep beeps are here. When she was placed in that home as a pre-adoptive placement, I kept in contact with her foster parent. We were down there with the foster mom, and her smoke alarm was going off. Beep, beep. My daughter went berserk. The beep beeps are here, the beep beeps are here. So I asked the foster mom, I said, where did she sleep when she was a baby? Here. She slept in the living room, in the crib. In the living room was a smoke alarm. So the foster mom didn't think of anything when the battery was going, that these beeps. But this little girl was terrified because there's this room that's beeping. So then when we got back home, I could say, there's no beep beeps here, because look, that smoke alarm is not going to go beep.
Bringing in birth family, bringing in previous foster parents, and other people in the child's life who can add more information to the story so that you can get the best picture possible of the child and how you can best respond.
If a triggering event is not addressed, the situation will begin to escalate. As the child's body moves into a state of dysregulation, their fight, flight, or freeze response engages, making it difficult for the brain to reason.
Sometimes it can seem like the escalation phase really can last the snap of a finger, but other times the escalation phase can be slower than that and can give the caregiver some opportunity and time to intervene.
When a child begins to escalate, the goal is to help them get back to a state of regulation in a safe environment.
You know, I would maybe move things out the room, move things out the way, because he would just scream and kick, and he would hit himself, and he would just escalate so high.
Or if you can't move the child, then can you move the other children or the other people that are present in the environment somewhere else?
All right, why don't you go get your swimsuit on, and so if you need any help, Katie can help you, okay?
In the escalation phase, the really important thing for caregivers to keep in mind is their own regulation.
Terry DeMarco, adoptive and foster parent.
I'm remaining calm. My voice is very calm and very soft. I'm using very few words.
Another really great technique, if we are safe in doing it, is to reduce our height and our body position so that we appear to be open and unconcerned, that we're lower in stature to where the child is.
Look around the floor for anything, a shoe, a ball, anything, and then start playing with it. Just start playing with it. And sure enough, when I start playing with that ball, he forgot whatever the trigger was. He forgot, and he started looking at the ball.
In the crisis phase, the most important thing that a caregiver can do for the child is to provide that co-regulation.
Usually what parents will do is try to correct, which is set boundaries and limits and give consequences, or try to talk reason to the child. It is not going to work effectively with a child who has a history of trauma and is triggered. They can't hear it, they can't process it.
When a child is in crisis, we're identifying the feelings instead of the behavior.
The acronym Q-tip is really important. Quit taking it personally, because if we take things personally, we won't be effective in helping them to get regulated.
The child in that moment is not able to provide that calm for themselves. Really what a caregiver is doing in that moment is lending their calm to the child.
If I was to go in that room and start giving them a lecture on why they shouldn't be acting the way they're acting, that's just going to escalate them more. But if I'm not even responding to what the issue is, I'm just there, my goal is to get the brain regulated first.
The recovery phase can be one of the most important in the crisis cycle.
You really have an opportunity to be emotionally connected with that child in a way that typically they're not going to let you.
Put my arm around him, or we'll talk it through. How could this have been done differently, Hunter?
Usually they are exhausted, their walls are down, they are emotionally raw, and you have an opportunity really at that point to be loving, to be nurturing, to be present.
Crisis can be an opportunity for growth, not just for our children, but also for us. For example, I recently had an experience with my son where he was doing an activity at the table, which I had made very clear was not okay. And I did not handle it well and invited a very large tantrum. And after we both got back to calm, he actually apologized first. And then I said, what could I have done differently? How could I have handled that better? And he said, you could have asked me to take it upstairs.
If a crisis threatens the safety of the child or the people around them, you may need to seek support from law enforcement, medical professionals, or mental health resources. A crisis plan can help you manage a crisis that you can't handle on your own.
It is important to know, really even before you encounter the situation, at what point you really need to seek help.
So a crisis safety plan is really a thought out in advance approach to managing a child who goes right through triggered to escalated to crisis. What's your plan if the child becomes so elevated and out of control that you feel that you and the child are at risk?
I'm going to ask myself 3 questions. Can I keep my child safe? Can I keep myself safe? And can I keep the other people in my home safe? If all 3 of those answers are no, then I need to just call the police.
Creating a list of people who can help is an essential part of a crisis plan.
Do you have a neighbor or a friend or a family member who is available to assist if you need a backup?
When asking friends and family to be part of your crisis plan, make sure to explain what they might be asked to do.
You're going to have to do some prep with your support system so that they have a real good understanding of your specific child, the way they specifically act out, and how you would appreciate them helping you.
In the Ross home, Lori's mother does her part to keep kids regulated by giving reflexology foot massages and teaching deep breathing techniques.
The touch and the movement on your feet is very good for your neurology, and it is phenomenal for our kids and their brains.
Lori's mother begins a reflexology foot massage and breathing session with the child.
So big in, long and slow out.
If we can catch that kid before they've really fully committed to that escalation, then we can oftentimes derail that, because that foot reflexology will calm that kid down.
There may be times when a child needs hospitalization or residential treatment. In those cases, show them they are still loved and part of the family.
We had a situation at home where one of our children tried to commit suicide. He went into this residential. I was not equipped to parent him, but they could help him. But he's still my son. I would still go see him. I was still taking clothes. He was still my son.
A few strategies can help parents prevent a crisis from starting in the first place. Incorporate routines into your daily activities to create a feeling of safety and predictability in the home.
We prep them for any new environment. A new activity that I did with my child recently was a trip on an airplane. So I walked him through every step. Could he remember all of that? Absolutely not. Did it make him feel safe to know that I was willing to give him all those details? Yes, it absolutely did.
Being attuned to your child can also prevent a potential crisis. Make sure their physical and psychological needs are met at the first sign of distress.
One of the ways is a tool called HALT, H-A-L-T.
HALT by Dr. Dan Siegel.
Are they hungry or thirsty? Are they angry? Are they lonely? Are they tired? It could just be that they're getting off the bus every day really hungry. And so instead of walking him all the way home, I meet him at the bus with a juice box and a box of crackers. When we meet those basic needs, we can avert a lot of big issues in our children.
Be aware of clues that a situation might escalate and provide a distraction.
So usually you know if the child that's in your home is starting to get agitated. You can read the body language if you're present in the room or you hear the noise escalating. So if I say to the escalating kid, hey, grab the leash, Hank needs to go outside real quick, I can get that kid to take the dog outside and then say, you know you're setting your sister off. Can we solve this?
My 5-year-old loves for me to have a pillow fight with him, and it helps him calm down. So when he's starting to get mean to one of the other children, I don't correct his meanness. I might say, would you like a pillow fight, or do you want me to squish you on your bed?
Modeling self-regulation and keeping yourself regulated can help stop a crisis from escalating.
Our kids look to their parents for a reaction, and they mirror our emotional state themselves. I might breathe in an audible way so that the child can hear me taking deep breaths. I want to give their brain every opportunity to hear and see that I'm not escalated.
Going through periods of crisis can be challenging, but it can also be an opportunity to grow.
Crisis, if it's handled properly, can bring a family closer together.
As a parent of children who are really struggling, I had the opportunity to be triggered and to see where all of my buttons are. And I'm not just a better mom today because of those opportunities. I'm a better person.
This video was funded by the Children's Bureau, Administration on Children, Youth, and Families, Administration for Children and Families, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, under grant number 90CO1134. The contents of this video are solely the responsibility of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of the Children's Bureau.